Hi there, my name is Naima Tryman, and today is day 6 of the blog series that I'm doing about my memoir, Praying for Peace, A Journey to Serenity. And today we're on to chapter 6, and that is the day that we talk about this picture here. Surely the most traumatic thing that's ever happened directly to me, physically at least. It was a really pivotal time in my life. For a long time, I referred to it as the accident, although since then I've had a number of other accidents, and that's not even the only one that probably should have been fatal. But anyway, here we go. So when we left off yesterday, I just had gotten my tonsils taken out. I was living with my father, but I went to go stay with my mother while I recuperated from the tonsil surgery. My sister's birthday is April 17th. For her 17th birthday, we all went out to dinner. My mother had been dating somebody for a while, but was very careful about, our confusion and our healing from our own situation, and, kept him completely away from us for a while until I think that, she felt pretty confident in the relationship. His name was Glenn, and Glenn took us all out to dinner for Kalia's 17th birthday, and that was how we met. It was a nice time, good time. And Saturday was the 18th. My softball team was playing in a tournament, so I went up and watched them play. I mean, I wanted badly to play. I didn't see what the difference was in like 2 days because I was cleared on Monday, but not Saturday. Went to the game, or the tournament, watched them play, and then came home. And this was the day of my basketball banquet. Senior year, one of the most successful basketball campaigns for that program in a really long time. It was gonna be a party, and I was getting ready to go back to school. So my mother, I was going back to my father's house that weekend. So my mother let me just take her van home and said, I'll meet you at the banquet, and I'll just get it back then. Her and Glenn were going to a wedding. Her best friend was marrying a guy that was in the fire department, who Glenn was actually a firefighter too, or is a firefighter. So they were going to this wedding, and she would just get the van from me at the banquet. So I went home and got dressed, and went to the banquet. It was a great time. I mean, it was in the cafeteria, but Coach Citro really hooked it up. Man, he had like a fog machine and strobe lights. He had the DJ from the games announce us one by one. It was like a whole production, and it was good. He gave us fleeces, the seniors, as our gift. These blue pullover fleeces with a little basketball on it and our name, and it was a really good time. And afterwards, my mom, mind you, at this time, I was drinking, but I wasn't. It wasn't problematic. I drank on Saturday nights. I did it at my father's house, and nobody really had any idea. No adults, anyway, had any idea that I was a drinker. So my mom had no qualms about saying it. You know what? Keep the van overnight. Hang out with your friends. I'll hook up with you tomorrow to get it. Just come by the house. I have, you left some medication and stuff there that you might need. Just grab that, and then we'll hook up tomorrow. So I said, okay, I'll see you at the house. So me and 5 girls from the team, I don't even know where we were going to this day. But I said, hey, I got the keys. What's up? It's Saturday night. And we all piled into the van. I said, just got to make one stop at my mother's house. And I remember I walked in, and somebody had sent me a get well balloon because I got my tonsils taken out. So she took the medication, put it in a plastic bag, like a shopping bag, took that balloon and tied the string from the balloon around the handles of this shopping bag. I kissed her goodbye and told her I'd see her next day, and that's pretty much the last thing I remember. So we're talking about, this is 15 years ago. I still have no recollection, really, a very limited recollection of that night. We didn't even probably get a mile. I mean, we were heading into East Orange, which is the next town over. I'm not really sure where we were going or what we were going to do, but we didn't get very far. And as I was driving, the balloon, it was a van, so there were captain seats. There was a space in between the seats instead of like the console that most cars have. So that's where I put the balloon and the medication. And as I was driving down the street, or I made a turn, I think, and the balloon drifted into my view. And with my right hand, I moved the balloon, and with my left hand I turned the wheel, and ran right off the road into a tree. Everybody in the car was hurt pretty badly. The fire department had to be called to get us cut out the car. I smashed my face on the steering wheel, and it's amazing the power of cars. From my witness accounts, I wasn't doing any more than 25 miles an hour. Just coming out of a turn really. But I hit my head hard and kind of slid below the dashboard, and something from like under the hood came through, and it went clean through my knee. Let's see if you can. I don't know if you can see that or not, but yeah. So there's the scar on one side, and there's the scar on the other side. So clean through my knee, and so that's a miracle that I was even able to play sports after that. But two of the girls had more minor injury. I think one had a broken leg and the other sprained ankle. I'm not sure. It's been a long time, but they were taken to the local hospital. Me and 3 other girls were hurt a little more severely, and we were taken to the trauma center at University Hospital in Newark. Apparently, at some point, I was kind of up, like walking around. Like once I got cut out the car, I was kind of fighting, and my body was in total shock. So I don't remember that, but the next thing I remember was waking up in the trauma center and them putting stitches in my nose. And my family didn't tell me for a really long time. I actually found out from a cop that was there years later that the doctors didn't think I was going to live through the night, that the trauma to my head was too severe, and that I was in a coma, and somehow I came out, like within, I guess later that night. Everything's really kind of a blur as far as that's concerned. It felt like it was still that night, but it was probably the next day. So 2 of the girls that came down there with me were discharged that night, or the next day. When I woke up, I did see them before they left. And then me and another girl, we were there for a couple days. She had broken her leg and was also having seizures, so I believe she hit her head a couple times. So I stayed there for 4 days, 4 to 5 days. I left on a Thursday. And at the time, again, my face was... Even the picture on the cover of the book was taken a couple of days after it happened, and some of the swelling had gone down some. From what I've been told, it was twice that size when it happened. So my face is huge. All the bones here around my right eye orbit were, just fractured into a million pieces. So there was no fixing that. They were going to have to do reconstructive surgery, but at that point in time, the swelling was too great. They needed to let me go home and rest until the swelling went down. So I did have a surgery, obviously, to close up the hole in my knee, and I went home and stayed with my mother for the next... My surgery was May 4th, so I stayed with my mother for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I laid on the couch, and I didn't do much. My cheekbone and my jawbone were also broken, so, you could see a lump. There was a visible lump right here where one of the bones was. That was all going to be fixed with the surgery. So it was painful to talk. It was literally painful to be awake. I wasn't so sure that I wanted to be alive anymore. It was the most physically painful thing I'd ever been through in my life. May 4th came, and I went and I got reconstructive surgery. So I don't have any bones anywhere here around my right eye. It's all plates and screws. You can actually you could feel one of the screws right here. But I was fortunate, man. I had one of the best eye doctors in the state. His name was Paul Langer. I still remember to this day. And one of the best ear, nose, and throat doctors, whose name was Ari Rosen. And together, they put a team together, and they did the surgery. And I came home the same day or the next day, one or the two. And I stayed home for the week, and I went. My friend Malika wanted to get me out of the house, and we went to the school play. And afterwards, we went to a diner, and that was back when you could still smoke inside. And I don't know if the smoke did. I don't think it was the smoke. That's what I thought. I spent the night at her house, and the next day I woke up, and the inside part of my eye here was coming out. It looked like, like bullfrogs have that thing under their neck that, that's what it looked like. And it was so much so that I couldn't close my eye. So, I mean, I called my mother in a panic, and, you know, she came and got me. I went home. We called the doctor. He said, you know, just to be patient, like, you know, put some ice on it, relax, and if it wasn't better by Monday, to come in. Came in on Monday. I ended up spending a week in the hospital, and when I told the doctor how I had to have a second surgery for my tonsils, he knew what the problem was. You know, my blood was not clotting, just like with the tonsil thing, and but I didn't have to have another surgery. He monitored me, put me on some kind of antibiotics, and I guess a blood clotting medication, and I stayed there for a week. And there were more complications than that. That, you know, you can look in the book for that, but that was, again, you know, excruciatingly painful. And every time I cried, one of the incisions was right here at the corner of my eye, and every time I cried out of pain, the salt water would go into the cut in my eye, and that would cause me to cry more, which would hurt more. And I mean, it was just, I mean, it was a vicious cycle that I dealt with a few different times in the process of healing. I only got a couple minutes left here, but I want to get in these last couple of things that happened. Because for as much as I had all this physical pain, emotional pain came on the back burner. So my accident was on April 18th. On May 29th, about 5 weeks later, now, in the process of me going back and forth to the hospital, my mother didn't have a car. And so even though I had just met Glenn the night before the accident, and my father didn't like him, so my father wasn't really showing up. He showed up here and there, but he wasn't around that much, and I was back to staying at my mother's house, you know, for her to take care of me. And Glenn did a tremendous amount of taxiing, you know, for me personally and for my mother, my siblings, and I was now back to my back to my father's house, and I got a phone call from her that Glenn's son had been killed in a motorcycle accident, hit and run in Newark. And, I mean, I was really messed up over that. Like, I didn't know him, I'd never met him, but I had already developed this affinity for Glenn because of how much he'd been there, in a situation that he definitely didn't sign up for. And so, you know, that was hard. I went to the funeral to support him, even though I'd never met Eric. And Eric was he was a tremendous track athlete. He was a high jumper. He held the New Jersey state record for a really long time. And there's more about that in the book too, but, you know, I don't have a whole lot of time here, but the details of that are in there too. And so that was really sad. And about a month later, I mean, I went to the prom. My eye was still shut. I was going to have surgery that summer to correct the muscles in my eyes. I'll talk about that tomorrow in the next chapter. But I was cockeyed, so I would wear a patch over my eyes. I went to my prom like that, and I was preparing for graduation like that. I was, you know, all but done with school, and my high school graduation was on June 22nd, and on June 18th, I got that phone call again from my mother. And, you know, one of my very closest friends when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of friends when I was a kid, one of my very closest friends when I was a kid, her name was Mikkel. Mikkel moved away in 6th grade to California and had just graduated. We were the same age, had just graduated high school. Her family had moved back to New Jersey, and she was on her way to the University of Virginia, I believe on an academic scholarship. And had been out, and you know, there's conflicting stories. I believe she fell asleep behind the wheel, but whatever happened, she crossed over the median. There was no median on this highway, Route 21 in Newark. Not really a highway, but there's highway parts of it. Hit a truck, or hit a car. The car spun her around, put her back on the other side of the road, and she ran into a truck. And the truck, I mean, completely flattened the car. From what I believe, she was taken to the morgue right in the car on the flatbed. I mean, dead on, you know, on impact. And this was 4 days before my high school graduation. So, I mean, I was devastated. I don't know that I've ever cried harder at a funeral than I did for Mikkel. And so the day of my high school graduation was the day of her wake. So I went to her wake. I came home and changed my clothes. I went to my high school graduation. We did something called Project Graduation, where, you know, it was a clean and sober, no drugs, no alcohol, all-night party sanctioned by the school. Came home and slept for like an hour or two, and then got up and buried my friend. That is the end of chapter 6 and the end of high school. And tomorrow we will get into the aftermath and the way that accident affected me physically and psychologically. Have a good day.